Welcome to part 8 of the Woman of the Bible series, where we're going to be looking at the life of the daughters of Lot and what we can get from that. So Lot was the nephew of Abraham, who was living in Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19 with his wife and 2 daughters. Lot was the only righteous person living in the area, so God went to save him specifically, and by extension his family. From the daughters' perspective, that was a great show of God's grace, because they would have died if they were the daughters of anyone else, really. God shows that same grace to those he calls to his fold, according to Ephesians chapter 2 verse 8 and John 8:44. Nobody can be saved without that grace. Speaking of which, think about Noah's family. They were in a very similar situation in Genesis 6-7, where the entire earth was destroyed with a flood. God only saw Noah as righteous, but his entire family was saved because they were related to the righteous man. And this didn't just end in biblical times. Even now, those who are close to a righteous man are also protected by God, as Paul told us in 1 Corinthians 7:14. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now they are holy. But now back to the story, which we're all here for. Lot and his family were allowed to escape, but Lot's wife turned back and perished. Lot's daughters stayed the course and made it to Zoar with Lot, and they survived. However, after Lot left Zoar with his daughters and went to live in a cave instead, the 2 women started to worry that they'd never be able to have children, as there was no man around. Instead of praying to God for a spouse, as Abraham's servant did for Isaac in Genesis chapter 24 verses 12-15, and even Moses got a wife when he was in the wilderness in Exodus 2, Lot's daughters instead decided to solve the problem using quite interesting methods. God judges everyone based on their own deeds, according to Jeremiah 17:10, so we can't obtain eternal life because our father was righteous or my mother was a devoted Christian. That doesn't really mean anything before God, in your specific case. And it certainly won't mean anything if we decide to take matters in our own hands like Lot's daughters did. Everyone goes through troubles in their lives, but what differentiates a Christian from someone who's not is who relies on God for a solution and who decides to use ungodly means to solve their problem, maybe quicker. Lot's daughters used those ungodly means, but Abraham, for example, patiently waited for a child, even to the age of 100, according to Genesis 21:4. And Elizabeth, Zechariah's wife, didn't use ungodly means either when she didn't have a child, but continued to serve God according to Luke 1 verses 5-7. The daughters of Lot could have done the same, and so can we if we fear God. So whatever our reason may be, we must try the best we can to rely on God, and to not try to solve our problems around him. Now, Lot's daughters probably didn't really know God that well, so that's the first thing that we can tackle to become different from them. We have access to the Bible, so we should use it to learn about God, learn about what he likes, his laws, his principles, so we then have a basis on what we should be doing. It was St. Paul who told us to study the Word so that we can become good servants of God in 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. With that basis, we can begin to respect and fear God and abstain from evil and be different from Lot's daughters. But that is the end of this video. If you liked the video, you can always subscribe, hit the like button, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified of when I post again. Have a great day, and I'd love to see all of you soon.